Dear students, expecting you are staying home and being blessed by the Almighty Allah, and you are using your time properly, you are not wasting your time monotonously. Today I would like to focus on some people who contributed their life, who sacrificed their life for the welfare of the people of the world. Now, my students, actually in the screen you see a picture of a man who is very known to you, who is very familiar to almost all the people of the world, who is Nelson Mandela. I think you have heard about the name of Nelson Mandela. Like Nelson Mandela, there are many great personalities in the world. I would like to focus on Unit 1, Lesson 1, and this unit deals with some people or institutions making history. Actually, we know the name of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, father of nation of Bangladesh. This type of people sacrificed their life for building of a nation, for building of a democratic world, and they sacrificed their life only for ensuring the equity, justice, peace all over the world. Today, we would like to discuss about Nelson Mandela. At first, I would like to introduce Nelson Mandela to you, and I would like to give you some information about Nelson Mandela. Here you see Nelson Mandela. He was born in 1918 and died in 2013. Here you know, Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918 in Vezo, Transkei, South Africa. Nelson grew up in a village and went away to study law when he was a young man. He wanted to help free black people from apartheid. In South Africa, for a long time, the people of South Africa were tortured inhumanly. They were discriminated, and the black people were tortured in such a way they were deprived of all types of human rights. And Nelson Mandela actually raised his voice against this torture. For that reason, he is remembered, and we will not forget the man forever. And if we would like to focus on Nelson Mandela in brief, we see until 1992, the government in South Africa ran an apartheid. And apartheid is when black people have to live apart from white people. That means the black people, being the native of South Africa, they were aloof from all types of rights, all types of facilities, all types of human rights. Most black people had no jobs, were very poor and could not vote because of this. That means they don't have any right. In 1994, he joined the African National Congress, ANC. From the student life, he was involved in politics, and in 1994, he joined the African National Congress. They made protest about the apartheid, but Nelson Mandela arrested and jailed twice for being the leader of the ANC. Nelson Mandela was arrested and he was in jail for many years, about 3 decades. About 3 decades he was in jail. In 1960, the government killed many black people for taking part in this protest. In 1960, the government killed many black people only for protesting against their torture, against their humiliation. In 1963, Nelson was sent to prison for taking part in this protest. Nelson Mandela was sent to prison or sent to jail for taking part in this protest. And after his first charge, he has to stay 5 years in prison. But after the Rivonia trial, he gets life imprisonment. That was very pathetic. That means he was sent to jail as a punishment of life imprisonment. In 1964, nearly the whole leading figures of the ANC condemned to life imprisonment. Like with Nelson Mandela, many other leaders were sent to jail for life imprisonment. And I would like to show you an island where he was kept for many years. That was Robben Island. this is the Robben Island that was scattered from the mainland, 10 miles away from the mainland. That was a scattered island, Robben Island. In this island, he was kept. This is the prison. This is the prison where Nelson Mandela was kept. This is the prison where Nelson Mandela was kept for many years. And this is the cell, this is the cell where Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. Just imagine. He was released in 1990 after the laws were changed. That means in that room, you see, this is the room where he spent so many years. You see some pictures of Nelson Mandela, just he did not pass the time in that jail idly, but he did many things. He was a Methodist and he was a Christian believer, and he believed in equity, justice, and he actually wanted to ensure the human rights and equity and justice. Actually, he believed that all the people are equal. All the people are equal, so they should be treated equally. Nelson Mandela is released from prison at the 11th to 1990. That means in 1990 he was released from jail. In 1991, he became the president of ANC and encouraged the president of Africa to end apartheid. He won the 1993 Nobel Prize for this and then became president of South Africa in 1994. And black people were allowed to vote for the first time. That means in this time, the black people got for the first time a voting power. That means they got the political rights. And Nelson Mandela was awarded Nobel Prize, and he in 1993 that was shared by F.W. de Klerk. You see the picture of that very person, F.W. de Klerk, who was a white leader. Being a white leader, Nelson Mandela just could solve the problem by the help of F.W. de Klerk. That means F.W. de Klerk negotiated the apartheid problem, and for that reason both Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk jointly awarded Nobel Prize for peace, in the field of peace, in 1993. And Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa in 1994. This is for the first time in the history of South Africa. And he worked to bring peace to the country and to help black people. He retired in 1999 and now travels the world helping the other countries solve their problems. That means in this way, Nelson Mandela became a world figure. And just made a history in the world. In this way, this is the brief history about Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela actually on December 5, 2013, out on his stay to Johannesburg, South Africa, he died. In this way, we can just tell about Nelson Mandela in brief. This is Nelson Mandela. Actually, if you want to know more about Nelson Mandela, you can read a book written by Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. A Long Walk to Freedom. In A Long Walk to Freedom, you can easily know about Nelson Mandela. Now, I would like to actually focus on some important topics on Nelson Mandela. All these things are about Nelson Mandela. And my dear students, now I would like to say something about Nelson Mandela which should be known to you. And Nelson Mandela actually is a figure who will remain forever in the heart of the people, the tortured people. Actually, he is not the man only for the people of South Africa, but he is a man for all the tortured people of the whole world. That means, Nelson Mandela was a different type of leader. Without shedding a drop of blood, he struggled against torture, he struggled against discrimination. He wanted to establish, he wanted to ensure equity, justice and peace all over the world. He didn't want black domination or he didn't want white domination. Actually, he wanted to establish democracy all over the world. Nelson Mandela remained a committed Methodist throughout his life. Nelson Mandela remained a committed Methodist throughout his life. As a church, he had the qualities that confirmed him as a true son of Methodism. What is Methodism actually? A member of a Christian Protestant domination originating in the 18th century evangelistic movement of Charles and John Wesley and George Whitefield, and a life of faith in God lived in service to others. He says, you can recognize an authentic inheritor in the one who conserves and reproduces, but also in the one who respects the logic of the legacy enough to turn it upon occasion against those who claim to be its guardians. Just feel the philosophy of Nelson Mandela, the mentality of Nelson Mandela, the motto of Nelson Mandela. He says, what was even more was that all the progress my people had made, the schools that I attended, the teachers who taught me, the clerks and interpreters in government offices, the agricultural demonstrators and politicians, policemen were all the products of missionary schools. This quote gives us some insight into how Mandela remembers his early religious formation and what he deems to be important in the church, namely powerful and charismatic individuals. The institution and its contribution towards the development of society. Actually, his motto was to develop a powerful democratic society. He was a charismatic leader. He was a really charismatic leader. Why? Because he wanted to establish such a society which will be devoid of all types of inequalities, all types of torture. However, reflecting on this period in his life at the time of writing, the Long Walk to Freedom, he says in Long Walk to Freedom, I consider myself obliged to pay proper respect to my customs and traditions, provided that such customs and traditions tend to keep us together and do not in any way conflict with the aims and objects of the struggle against racial oppression. He was a religious believer. As a religious believer, of course, he didn't support the discrimination. He always wanted to abolish the oppression or suppression or the torture of general people. But I shall neither impose on my custom on others nor follow any practice which will offend my comrades, especially now that freedom has become so costly. That means I told you before, my dear students, Nelson Mandela was such a leader, being a black person, being the tortured, being a member of tortured class. He didn't want to establish black domination society, black dominating society. He didn't want to establish black domination, neither white domination. That means he wanted to establish decolonization. And this perspective would come to optimize Mandela's understanding of African tradition and the Christian religion. In his life as president in a deeply divided nation, on the 2nd of February 1990, F.W. de Klerk, I told you before, the then president of South Africa, announced the unbanning of the ANC and Pan-African Trust Congress (PAC), and this formed part of a series of events that would eventually lead to the release of Mr. Mandela from prison and ultimately the first democratic election in South Africa on the 27th of April 1994. That was the success, that was the achievement of Nelson Mandela. And Nelson Mandela for the first time established a democratic society in South Africa. So he was the pioneer. He was the pioneer to establish a democratic society in South Africa, which was really unimaginable for the general people of South Africa, being tortured for many years by the white minority group. That means the people of South Africa were tortured inhumanly, and they were, though the number of white leaders are few, very minor, but they were tortured. But the major class of people were tortured by the white minority rule. During this period, Mr. Mandela had numerous contacts with Methodism ministers and denominational officials. Many of the meetings were seek advice from these persons to build relationships and develop trust with the important constituency in anticipation of the 1994 national elections. Nelson Mandela was a Methodist. I told you before. Nelson Mandela was a Methodist. Throughout his life, he maintained a strong association with the denomination and acknowledged the role that it played in the forming of his values. In his words, he says, my joy at being in this conference is multiplied manifold by the fact that this is for me also a personal homecoming. Both in the physical and spiritual sense. You know, the environs of Amatata are not only my humble origins. It is here that my spiritual association with this great church started. And I cannot overemphasize the role that the Methodist Church has played in my own life. You know, he was really a very neutral type of personality. And South Africa is a largely religious population. It is certainly important to build a strong relationship with this significant constituency in South African society. The ANC understands that the church has a significant role to play in the future of South Africa. If not simply by sheer members in the population, Mandela did not see himself as a theologian, but rather as an ordinary person. That means Nelson Mandela did not see himself as a theologian, but an ordinary person, trying to make sense of mysteries of life. And concepts such as reconciliation, forgiveness, hopes were formed and adopted from African culture and Christian theology as necessary aspects for the establishment of a functional and just human society, rather than a theological ideals that are developed in order to please God. And I would like to focus on some point especially about Nelson Mandela, which will make you clear about the concept of Nelson Mandela and about understanding this great personality. Christian humanism is inclusive. Our primary identity is derived from the fact that we are human. This was the motto of Nelson Mandela. He always thought that we are all human beings. So there should not be raised any question of discrimination, being white or black, because he believed, and he actually was a fundamental believer of equality of humanity. That is, he told we all are human beings. Christian humanism affirms the dignity of all persons as bearers of the image of God. As such, emphasizes shared responsibility for all humanity. To deny the dignity of another person is to deny one's own dignity. This is very valuable. That means if you deny others' dignity, it means that you are actually denying your own dignity. He believed this. Since we share a common humanity. Christian humanism is open to learning about what it means to be human from a wide variety of sources, some of which may not ordinarily be considered as primary sources in Christian theology. That means Nelson Mandela believed in Christian theology, and according to Christian, he always believed that there should not be a question. There should not have a question of the discrimination or variation or that means deprivation of the human rights. And Christian humanism understands that one cannot truly love God without loving all human beings. Nelson Mandela believed that if we want to love God, of course we have to love human beings. Without loving human beings, we cannot be actually truly a religious personality, or we cannot love God. And here, since all persons are created by God, all the persons, all the people are created by God, so we don't have any power, we don't have any option to hate any human beings, we don't have any power, we don't have any option to discriminate between human to human. We should not actually foster these things into our heart. Christian humanism subscribes and presents a nation of justice that transcends mere physical or material well-being. Christian humanism understands goodness is closely linked to truth and beauty, like John Gibbs. Actually, he wants to make a close link with truth and beauty. When one considers these affirmations, it would be plausible to conclude that Nelson Mandela's life and work was informed by a type Christian humanism. In Nelson Mandela's case, it would be in African Christian humanism, since it valued and included many elements of African culture in his moral framework. For example, of the dignity of all human persons, the importance of shared responsibility for one another, and learning about the human conditions from African traditional sources. So my dear students, actually in brief, we have already learned about Nelson Mandela in brief, and after this discussion, it is clear, that Nelson Mandela was different type of personality. Nelson Mandela was a different type of personality, and he wanted to establish the equity, justice and peace all over the society. And Nelson Mandela actually not a man confined to South Africa only, but he was a spirit. He was a pioneer for establishing democratic society all over the world. So Nelson Mandela will be remembered forever. So dear students, I would like to focus you on your textbook that is titled on People or Institutions Making History. I was telling you about Nelson Mandela. If we want to talk about Nelson Mandela, we can tell many things. Actually, there is a long history about Nelson Mandela. He sacrificed his whole life for the people of South Africa, and almost about 27 years he just sacrificed his life only for the tortured people. And in your textbook, in People or Institutions Making History, I would like to show you about that very figure. There are 4 people here. The first one is Nelson Mandela, and then this is our rebel poet, our national poet, Kazi Nazrul Islam, and then this is Dr. Muhammad Shahidullah, and here Bill Gates. These 4 people are here, and at first we would like to focus on this person, Nelson Mandela, whom we are discussing. From your textbook. I would like to show you the text or passages. This is Nelson Mandela. This is Nelson Mandela, from apartheid fighter to president. Actually, at first we are very familiar to this personality as an apartheid fighter, and then he became the first black president of South Africa. And in your textbook, Unit 1, Lesson 1, here Johannesburg Reuters. If we go through the text, Nelson Mandela guided South Africa from the shackles of apartheid to a multiracial democracy. As an icon of peace and reconciliation who comes involved in the struggle for justice around the world. Actually, Nelson Mandela guided South Africa. Here, Nelson Mandela led South Africa, Nelson Mandela guided South Africa, and his motto was to free the people of South Africa from the shackles of apartheid and to establish a multiracial democracy where all the people will be treated equally, where all the people will get the democratic rights, democratic power. As an icon of peace and reconciliation, he was an icon of peace and reconciliation. And imprisoned for nearly 3 decades, one decade, that means 10 years makes a decade. 3 decades means about 3 decades means 30 years. Here, the word nearly 3 decades, that means he was in jail for about 3 decades, that means about 30 years, not 30 years, about 30 years, for his fight against white minority rule. He was in jail for fighting against white minority rule, and Mandela never lost his resolve to fight for the people's emancipation. Mandela was very determined. Mandela was very determined. He never lost his resolve. He never lost his determination. That means he was very determined to abolish this ill-treatment, inequality, and his motto was to emancipate the people. He was determined to bring down apartheid, avoiding civil war. This is the very important line. This is the very important line about Nelson Mandela. He didn't want to make any civil war, but he wanted to actually bring down apartheid. His prestige and charisma helped him win the support of the world. That means he was the most world figure. He became the most important world figure for his charismatic ability, charismatic power. He told, "I hate race discrimination most intensely, and it saw in all its manifestations." That means he hated race discrimination. Not only that, he hated also the expression that comes from discrimination. I have fought it all during my life. I will fight it now and will do so until the end of my days. That means this indicates the determination of Nelson Mandela. That means he will not stop until abolishing, until finishing, until bringing down the ill treatment or discrimination. And here, the end of my days indicates the death. The end of my days. That means he will not stop before his death. Mandela said in his acceptance speech on becoming South Africa's first black president in 1994. I told you before that Nelson Mandela became the first black president in 1994, and before accepting his speech, he told these lines. "The time for the healing of the wounds has come. The moment to bridge the chasms that divided us has come." That means for a long time we were divided. For a long time we were discriminated. Already the time has been ended, and the bridge which was really broken, the bridge between human beings relationship was broken. Right now all these things have just come down, and everything become possible. We have at last achieved our political emancipation. That means the people of South Africa were not emancipated, were not ensured getting political rights. Right now, Nelson Mandela told that we have already achieved our political rights, political emancipation. In 1993, Mandela was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, an honor he shared with F.W. de Klerk, the white African leader who had freed him from prison 3 years earlier, and negotiated the end of apartheid. That is here, the figure F.W. de Klerk is very important here. F.W. de Klerk is a very important figure here. I told you before, F.W. de Klerk was a white African leader who was the then president of South Africa. He understood the actual thing. He understood the philosophy or the motto of Nelson Mandela. For that reason, he negotiated the problem. And not only that, he actually helped Nelson Mandela to free from jail before 3 years earlier. For that reason, Nelson Mandela was in jail for 27 years. And only for that, I told you before, he was in jail for nearly 3 decades. It means that he was freed from jail before 3 years, and it was done by F.W. de Klerk. For that reason, both F.W. de Klerk and Nelson Mandela jointly awarded Nobel Prize for Peace in 1993. And Mandela went on to play a prominent role on the world stage as an advocate of human dignity in the face of challenges ranging from political repression to AIDS. Nelson Mandela actually faced many challenges. At the time, South African people were suffering from a very fatal virus, that is HIV, that means leads to AIDS. acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and from that time to political repression, Nelson Mandela solved all these problems and took the challenges. He formally left public life in the 2004 before his 86th birthday, telling his adoring countrymen. The word adoring, it is very important. That means the people whom he adored, the countrymen. That means the South African people were very, very adorable to Nelson Mandela. He told them, don't call me, I will call you. This is the right speech of a leader. That means he told his countrymen, I am leaving, I am going. I am going to be alone, but don't think that I will forget you. Do not call me, I will call you. If you fall in danger, no problem, I will call you. You need not call me. That means I will be aside, I will beside you always, forever. But he remained one of the world's most revered public figures, combining celebrity sparkle with an unwavering message of freedom, respect, and human rights. That means before going to solitary life, he established these things. He is an epic center of our time, our South African youths, wherever you are. Nadim Godimer was a Nobel laureate, and he told these lines in remembrance of Nelson Mandela. He is at the epic center of our time. Actually, he was not a man only for South Africa, but he was a man of all the people of the world. Nadim Godimer, the South African writer, Nobel laureate for literature, once remarked, the years Mandela spent behind bars made him the world's most celebrated political prisoner and a leader of the mythic stretch of millions of black South Africans. That means he was a pioneer, he was a leader, he was a milestone for the black people of South Africa and other oppressed people far beyond his country's borders. That means he was not only an inspiring figure, he was not a milestone only for the people of South Africa, but he was a milestone for all the tortured people of the world, just crossing his country's border. Charged with capital offences in 1963 Monia trial, his statement from the dock was his political testimony. That is sure. He was a political leader, so all the words told by Nelson Mandela will be regarded as a political testimony. And during my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of the African people. In that time, during church, he told these things. During my lifetime, I have dedicated my life, myself, I have sacrificed myself for the people of the South Africa, for the tortured people. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against black domination. This is the real mentality or real sentiment of democracy. That means Nelson Mandela actually didn't fight for the black people, but he fought against white domination, against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all the persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. That means he wanted to ensure equalization. That means he wanted to establish equal opportunities for all types of people. And he wanted to establish a free society, a real democratic society. It is an ideal I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. That means he was ready to sacrifice his life for establishing human rights. Friends adored Mandela and fondly called him Madiba. Madiba is the clan name. And actually the people of South Africa called him in that name Madiba, the clan name by which he was born. People lauded his humanity, kindness and dignity. You know, my dear students, that's all for Nelson Mandela in Unit 1 Lesson 1. And you know, before finishing the class, I should like to tell you that if you want to know more about Nelson Mandela, you can read some books, Long Walk to Freedom, My Journey, like that. You can read these books, and of course you should know about Nelson Mandela because he was the most remarkable figure in the world history, in the world history. For that reason, you should read about this personality. You have to read this person at your home, and you have a textbook, and from the textbook you should go through all the lines and you have to internalize the inner meaning. In the first class I told you that it will develop your reading skill. If you want to develop your reading skill, of course you have to go through all the lines very minutely and you have to internalize the inner meaning or the contextual meaning of the words. that is used in the text, and in this way you can develop your reading skill. And my dear students, in the next class I will focus you on some questions related to the text and related to your syllabus. I will focus on the question items and for your practice. So I would like to say thank you for today, and before finishing the class, I would like to say you again, please my dear students, stay at your home and try to lead a healthy life, and by taking healthy food and try to intake all kinds of foods which will boost up your immune system, and try to be mentally jolly. Though it is true that you are not in the hilarious mood because you are waiting for entering your cherished or deserved institution, inshallah everything will be okay and everything will come down, and I think definitely we will see you together very soon. Don't pass your time idly and try to pass your time appropriately and meaningfully. So thank you my dear students, see you later.